The seventh generation of console gaming was a time for experimentation. This was a point in time where many franchises found themselves trying to attract new audiences by changing their direction with games that were completely different from the genres they originated as. Long-running series like XCOM, Front Mission, Red Faction, and even Fallout found their series branching off with games that were drastically different from their predecessors. And while not all of them were fucking dog shit, some of the changes were enough to leave long-time fans feeling slighted. As I mentioned in my Homefront video, this generation was also a time where the number of first-person shooters had really gone off the fucking deep end. This was most likely brought on by trend chasing, as many companies would take notice of the overwhelming popularity of Call of Duty. Simply put, they saw the game raking in a shitload of cash and wanted a piece of that pie. I had briefly touched base on some of the shittier games, but failed to mention that the same era was responsible for producing many of the best first-person shooters that I personally ever played. And despite all the fucking shit games that were tossed onto the market during that time, it could also be considered somewhat of a renaissance for first-person shooters. If you aren't already aware, there's lots of genres that I don't know jack shit about. While every genre has its own audience, I usually just stick to my own sort of shit because that's what I know best. That being said, when a game series releases something into the territory of a genre that I can actually pick up and play without scratching my head going, what the fuck does any of this shit mean, then I might consider doing so if the premise looks interesting enough. An example of a game that falls into this territory is the 2012 first-person shooter Syndicate. Another genre swapper with its roots originating from a real-time tactical background, this game was developed by Starbreeze Studios, a studio who at the time had worked on more than a handful of FPS games, which included The Darkness and some fucking Chronicles of Riddick game. Only being familiar with the fact that the game is a reboot of a classic series created by the long-dead Bullfrog Productions, Syndicate 2012 is a game that I actually forgot even existed until I saw one of its predecessors on a GOG sale. Unfortunately, due to bullshit delisting, getting it on PC was an actual pain in the fucking dickhole. Unless you want to take the G2A route or hope that you can find a fresh copy with a CD key safely nested inside on eBay, your best bet now is to get a physical copy of this fucking thing on console. That is, if you have the option available to you. After that, the real question is, was the hassle fucking worth it? Well, kind of. After starting the game with a big dramatic cutscene setting the stage for what kind of shit you could expect, you find yourself strapped to a chair. You're just sitting there wondering what the fuck is going on before some asshole starts beating the shit out of you. No context, nothing. Confused, you get a prompt to unload on this son of a bitch real quick before breaking free of your bindings and then hustling your ass out of the building. All while being shot at for no fucking reason whatsoever. I gotta admit, I had no fucking clue what the fuck was going on this whole time as I made my way through buildings and alleyways shooting televisions and hobos. It didn't take long before I hit the end of the stage, but not before having massacred what felt like half of a fucking city. You then find out that the whole fucking thing you just did was a test. What the fuck, a test? Yeah, all that was a bullshit test, I guess. So afterwards, the dude from the movie The Ringer comes in with some other asshole and tells you to do some shit for him. Syndicate's opening mission was more than enough for me to stay interested to endure it for longer than a quick glance. Strangely, the linearity felt refreshing considering all the fucking open world games these days too. There was also vibes of Deus Ex and Blade Runner with a dystopian future setting as well. It wasn't long after this introduction where I got my first skill, and holy fuck did it make me realize how violent Syndicate actually was. There's something funny about watching enemies pull grenades out of their ass and blow themselves up and their buddies, leaving behind bits and pieces of body parts. There's also the Persuade ability, which is very similar to something like Possession from Bioshock Infinite. I found this to be one of the most entertaining gameplay aspects. However, unlike Bioshock Infinite, the gunplay in Syndicate doesn't feel nearly as refined. This could be a personal complaint, but there was a slight weighty feel to movement and guns to the point where it felt odd for me to move around and even aim and shoot. Fortunately, you have an ability to perform a slow motion similar to the Fear series as well. This greatly helps on the shooting front, and without it, I probably would have had a rough time even making it through the campaign due to some of the difficulty spikes. I hate to say this, but I did leave Syndicate feeling meh. Seriously, I felt meh, and I don't put that shit lightly. The game was fine, not really good or bad. If anything, it was above average. I hadn't really done this in forever, but I actually looked up the game's Metacritic score after playing it, and it turns out both reviewers and other players were on the same fucking boat too. I'd say I'm not far from that 60s range either, probably a bit higher. It seems like the overall consensus of Syndicate 2012 was that it was an average game. Sure, it had a cool ass setting with the cyberpunk aesthetics, and half of the game had a pretty good soundtrack too, but that was really it. I don't really mind the linearity, but I do need something more engaging than just gunning down everything in my path from point A to point B. If I was to add any other positive aspects, it would be for the fact that the game sort of gives off vibes that remind me of Doom 2016. Except instead of being a badass space marine, you're an agent going around massacring the fuck out of every son of a bitch that gets in your way, albeit in a way that unfortunately becomes stale before you hit the end credits. There's various boss battles which each have their own unique gimmicks, but they all share the fact that they tend to be spongy as fuck. It took me around 5 hours to finish Syndicate, and I can honestly say that I didn't really like or dislike the game. The game did feel like it got progressively better towards the end, but before you actually reach that portion of the game, it's just okay. Overall, Syndicate is alright, but I can honestly say that I prefer something like Deus Ex far more, and I think that's the issue. Syndicate isn't meant to be played like Deus Ex. It's just a standard shooter with lots of mayhem and gore. It's supposed to be played in the same vein as something like Doom, where you're just going around and brutally fucking everything up, and that's not a bad thing. We're living in a world where every son of a bitch under the sun wants to create a generic open world filled with boring ass padding. That being said, and as much as I really fucking hate to admit it, Syndicate was at least refreshing in the fact that I didn't have to travel to bumfuck nowhere to do anything. It's not the greatest game ever, but it is one that I'd say may have been underappreciated due to the time that it released in. It's a shame too, because there was a potential here for the developers to do something with the game's world. Unfortunately, we'll probably never get to see what that potential could have actually led to.